Welcome, Kimberley, and thanks so much for joining me today on How I Sell This. It's absolutely fantastic to have you with me today.
Thanks, Christina. Good to see you again.
And you. So, as you know, the purpose of the How I Sell This podcast is to interview top performing salespeople to uncover what it is that they do that makes them the best amongst their peers. Now, I desperately want to get into all of that because you are, I think, the most awarded sales professional I've ever spoken to, let alone, recorded a conversation with. But before we dive into that, I think it is important that you take a few minutes to kind of walk us through your professional career to date. So would you mind doing that?
Absolutely. It's probably not as exciting as you would hope. I finished high school with not a whole lot of direction. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do from a career perspective. So I just went on a mission to try and find a job in an office. So I was looking at reception roles, admin roles. I think kind of with the foresight that could get me into a company and then I could kind of go from there. So ultimately I ended up with a telemarketing role, and that was kind of how I ended up in my current industry, and it just grew from there. So yeah, unfortunately no great tales about university or after school study. I just kind of fell into it, and here I am today.
And so where did you go after telemarketing?
So when I was working at that business, my manager at the time, who was also the sales manager, was quite liking me in that role. He said that I was a bit of a natural on the phone and I was having a lot more success than they'd had with previous people. So when one of the existing account managers left, he took a bit of a gamble on me and offered me an opportunity to try the in-field sales, and I kind of started from there.
And so then how did you progress into kind of more account management positions that you're in today?
Yeah, so that first role that he gave me was technically an account manager role, but they gave me, I think it was technically the smallest sales district at the time, just so he could kind of give me a bit of an introduction into it. But yeah, hit the ground running. I think in my first year, I hit 50% target, which wasn't awful numbers for that patch. It was quite a tricky area to sell in. But then from there, he was happy for me to stay on. I just kept growing that patch. And then after I kind of proved myself in that smaller area, I was then offered a more kind of CBD type patch, and then kind of just grew from there, and I started writing my target each year and then kind of overachieving from there.
So you're with Konica Minolta today. Have you always worked in that print space?
Yes, I've only had, I think, maybe like a 6-month hiatus from the industry. After 10 years at my first role, I just thought, because I got into the industry when I was 18, I thought at age 28 maybe I should expand and try something else, but I left for all of 6 months and then got headhunted and got sucked back in again. So, yeah, I've not had a lot of time outside of print.
Wow. Well, you must really like it.
Yeah, I would hope so after all these years.
You must be very well known too, I would imagine, if you've been in it for, how many years is it now that you've been in the print sector?
I'd be almost 20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I am. I think I'm known in the education space just because I've been doing that for the longest. But yeah, I think print is quite a small industry, so a lot of people move around to other companies, so your name does kind of get thrown around, and I think that's true for any kind of successful people in this industry.
So maybe let's start with that first telemarketing role, because I think working on the phones can be really hard, but it's where a lot of people start out because there's often, roles going, and they're often seen as entry-level sales roles. I know it was a little while ago, but do you remember if there was anything that you found challenging when you were starting out in that role?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very, very daunting because I'd never done anything like it before. I mean, coming fresh out of high school, I hadn't really had any kind of business interactions with adults before. I still very much felt like a kid. But yeah, I think it was definitely a great learning experience for face-to-face sales, because people are brutal on the phone. They are more open to rejecting you. They are more open to being rude because it's not a face-to-face discussion. You're just a voice on the other end of the phone. So I think I learned a lot through that role. So my main role was to try and get appointments for the account managers so they could go out and do the selling. So I was really trying to get the commitment of time, which can be extremely difficult when the people that you need the time from are generally the busiest people in their businesses. But yeah, it was a great learning experience. I think it really got me over that hurdle of rejection, because I think that's probably one of the toughest things that people have to deal with. Is rejection is tough to deal with in your professional and personal life. But on the phone, you get rejected multiple times a day. I think I was making oh geez, really stretching my memory now, but I think it was like 50 phone calls a day, something like that. And you might get one person who will agree to an appointment out of all those calls. So yeah, it's hard slog, but it definitely helped me in my sales career for sure.
How do you, I mean, obviously that sort of role with those kind of numbers helps build resilience. And I think a fundamental character trait for successful salespeople is resilience. But how do you navigate that level of rejection? Because that's when you're young, inexperienced, that's a lot of knockback. How did you manage that? Do you remember?
I do remember like the first couple of weeks being incredibly daunting, and I'd feel pretty flat at the end of each day, just having to deal with constant rejection. But I think inherently most people don't want to be rude. So even though there might be a level of rejection there, it's not always this aggressive, rude rejection. Right. It can be quite polite. So, and I think as well, when you do talk to that many people, like there are nice people in there and they're the ones that kind of motivate you to keep going. But yeah, you get a thick skin very, very quickly when you do have to deal with some rude people. But yeah, I think it comes down to your personality as well. I mean, I've worked with salespeople who've been doing it for as long as I have, and they still don't deal well with rejection. I think that's just a character trait in them, you know? So yeah, I think it really does come down to the individual and how you choose to let it impact you. And at the end of the day, I knew I was just trying to get time for an account manager. It was nothing personal. So I never really let it impact me all that much.
Yeah, there's a great saying that I learned back in my first full-time sales role, which is no is only no for now, it's not no forever. And I think that is at the heart of resilience as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So if we fast forward now to your role at Konica Minolta, again, just for a little bit of context, can you explain to us what your current position involves you doing now?
Yep. So I'm currently the private and tertiary education account manager. So I'm dealing with all of the private schools in the Perth metro area and all of the universities and TAFEs as well, along with a handful of tertiary training institutes.
And what sort of solutions are you selling into those organisations?
So the majority of what we do is print, so desktop printers, photocopiers, print room, managed services around print rooms as well. But we are also in the solutions space. So not only are we looking at paper coming out of printers, we're also looking at the paper that's going into printers. So where can we help with scanning solutions, removing physical paper from the business around kind of records management, and also looking to digitise processes as well. So especially in the education sector, paper forms is a big one. So there's just really looking at areas where we can try and remove that paper from the business and just make them a little bit more modern in their day-to-day processes.
See, that's interesting because I'm not sure when people think about selling printers that they're thinking about removing paper. I think people possibly think the opposite.
Yes.
So it's modernising the space.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the reality is, I mean, people want to print less, so we might as well be on the other side of it as well, you know, whether the device is dealing with input or output, they still need our devices.
Look, I know when I approached Dean, who's the head of sales in there at Konica Minolta, for a recommendation of someone that I could have a chat to, yours was the very first name that he suggested, which is absolutely wonderful. And I know that that's because you've been a pretty consistent top performer in the business. What do you think that you are doing that is making you stand out as a top sales performer?
I think probably the main thing that I care about is consistency. So when I'm meeting with a customer and I am saying that I'm going to get back to them in X amount of time, or I'm going to do this after the meeting, I think just always delivering on that really helps to build that trust in that relationship. I think the other thing as well is just being a likable person. People buy from people they like. So you can be as clued up and robotic in delivering your messaging as you want to be, but at the end of the day, that feels forced, and I just don't think people buy that. So I'd always try and keep my conversations very natural and just try and build a natural friendship with the customer. And I think that makes you more memorable, builds the trust. It's just a natural relationship then. So I think that their consistency and building a natural relationship is key.
They're two, you know, amazing things to do. But can you think more about the specifics of what it is that you do to influence and win customers?
Yeah, I mean, particularly in my space, because I've been doing this for a while now, I know my competitors relatively well. And I think knowing your competitors' shortcomings is an opportunity for you to shine. So I think when it comes down to actually discussing the requirements of the customer, like really listening to what they have to say and not just waiting for your opportunity to speak. So if I know that they have a legitimate issue within their business, I want to dig into that. I really want to understand what their drivers are. And that's going to allow me to really kind of tickle those boxes for them. And then it just becomes a natural decision for them to go with the person who best understood their challenge and the person that's going to like address all those challenges. So yeah, I think that's definitely key, is really digging into their main drivers for why they want to deal with you.
And how do you, this might sound crazy, but how do you do that? How do you dig into someone to uncover someone's drivers?
Yeah, I think being in the same industry for a long time, I do understand a lot of the common problems that you see. And I think when they can pick up that you are understanding what they are dealing with because you're already familiar with it, that gives you the opportunity to give other examples as well. Like if they're saying to me, oh, we've got XYZ problem with our current print solution, I can go, well, the school that's, just a kilometre down the road, they were literally telling me the same thing last week and they had this, and this challenge. Does that apply to you as well? So I think using your experience around from other customers is that carries a lot of weight because you're literally giving them examples of a school that's exactly the same as them and they are mutual problems. So yeah, I think definitely giving examples from similar clients is great, but also just getting them talking. I mean, if they say, oh, we've got X problem, you want to know about who is that impacting? What does that look like? What would it look like if that problem didn't exist? Like really just kind of digging deeper into like, yes, there's a surface level problem, but what is all the consequences of that problem not being addressed?
That's great. And I wonder if that helps build your credibility, because rather than jumping to solution, you kind of hold the space and you go deeper, which kind of shows that you've got that genuine interest in exploring it at a deeper level.
I think that is definitely the case. And I mean, that comes with understanding your competitors, right? Like I know that they'll have a 30-minute meeting and they'll just give a kind of generic, this is the solution that we propose. And it's kind of, a lot of the time you're seeing kind of recycled ideas, whereas I'll try and build every proposal to be bespoke to that customer. Like if they have a very specific challenge that, yes, I might have seen it before, but maybe it's in a, somewhat unique way, I'll always try and really address that particular issue that they've brought to the table. And I think just being able to communicate back to them, well, this is the solution I've come up with because you told me this, and this addresses it in this, and this way. It just makes a lot of sense to them to go, oh yeah, you've actually really heard us and you genuinely understand and want to resolve our issues. So it carries a lot of weight, I think.
I think that sounds very powerful. There's a direct correlation, that direct connection between these problems that you've told me you have, and that's why this is the best solution for you. I could see that would be very powerful. So you've been with Konica Minolta for over 9 years. What have you noticed about how easy or hard it is to win business now? Has anything, is there anything that you've noticed that's different in the marketplace that might be making it easier or harder?
Yeah, I think it changes every year, to be honest. Different concerns become high priority. Like obviously the cost of living is high at the moment, so everyone you talk to is trying to reduce costs. But I think the longer that you do a role, the easier it is to understand those changes in the market, and you just you're a bit of a chameleon. You just move, to adjust to those different challenges that come up. So yeah, I think every sales year presents a new challenge, and you just have to kind of be able to be fluid and adapt to that. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's getting harder. I think it's just whether you have the skill to deal with the new challenges that continue to pop up, because change is inevitable. You just have to be willing to accept that things are going to keep changing. And I think as salespeople, you can't be rigid in the way that you do things because you're going to get left behind. You have to be able to adapt to the environment that's around you. So I think that's Yeah, I wouldn't say it's any easier or harder. You just have to be willing to adapt, I think.
But I find that interesting because that suggests to me that you're not selling in the same way that you were 9 years ago, because you're paying close attention to what is changing in the marketplace, and therefore you're adjusting your behaviors or your planning or your positioning or your approach to accommodate those changes.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely changed the way that I'm doing things. When I originally started with Konica Minolta, I was actually in commercial sales, so I was kind of dealing with small to medium businesses, and that's a very different conversation to when you're dealing with a school, because you might be talking to a company that has 10 employees and what you propose is going to impact 10 people, whereas when you're talking to a school, you are impacting potentially 100 staff and thousands of students. So it is a very different conversation. And I think that that's come with years of experience as well, is just being able to have a different, higher level conversation. I think a lot of people start in sales in a more transactional way. You know, you want to learn the product, you want to go meet with the client, you want to propose a solution and then move on to the next one. And I think the more years that you spend in a role, you do expand and become better at what you're doing and be able to have more educated conversations. So yeah, I think that I don't think necessarily the market impacts that. I think it's just the amount of time and experience that you have in a role really does develop who you are as a person and change the way that you're talking to people. So yeah, it's been interesting. I'm definitely a completely different person I am today than when I was at age 20 or when I started in sales before.
Wouldn't we love to be able to just learn our product or service and solution, present it to someone and get them to buy? I feel like that's what we did 20 years ago, but it definitely doesn't happen now. And I wonder if that's why you are being so successful, is because whether it was conscious or not, but you are paying attention to the different environments that you're selling in, and you're really thinking about the change that you need to make based on the different buyer that you're selling to. And it sounds as though selling more efficiently than what you maybe were able to in the past, because you have to be selling a solution now that solves a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think when you start out, it's a bit of spray and pray. You just want to be in every opportunity and hope that some of them land. Whereas now, I think I'm definitely a lot more targeted in the people that I'm talking to, and just being a lot more timely and conscious around those discussions. So yeah, I think that the more aware you are of yourself and those opportunities and how you're going to tackle them, the success rate naturally becomes higher, because you're taking a more strategic approach to what you're doing each day.
Question without notice. Sam will take this out of the podcast, but I want to ask you about planning.
Mm-hmm.
So can you share with us, when it comes to planning your time or planning your time on your territory, what are some of the things that you do to make that as efficient as possible? Because in order to be a top performer, I would imagine you're thinking really clearly about where you're spending your time, who you're seeing, who you're getting access to, and obviously the type of conversation that you're having. Can you share with us kind of what you do to be quite strategic with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of salespeople will hate to hear me say this, but the CRM is so important for me. I think when you're juggling a lot of prospects and a lot of opportunities, my brain only has so much space, and I know that without some kind of system in place, that I am going to forget about people I need to call or things I want to follow up on. So I think now that I've been doing this role for a while, it's kind of a lot more natural now. But I think when you do come into a new territory or role, there is going to be a year or two of grunt work. You need to really dig in and understand the area that you're selling in. You need to understand your buyers, the roles that you're going to be dealing with, what's important to them, what's not important to them. So I think that I probably spent a good chunk, probably the first couple of years of being in this role, of really getting into that. And that allowed me to really kind of build out my territory in a way that I wanted to tackle it. So I now know that like my largest prospects are ones that I want to be talking to every 3 to 6 months. I want to be catching up for coffees. I want to be doing that groundwork and building a relationship. There might not be an opportunity there for 3 or 4 years, but I know that I'm going to be here in 3 to 4 years. So those little things that you do today have such a huge impact down the line. So yeah, your biggest, most strategic accounts, it might seem like a lot of work, but I think that's why I have partnered with, the likes of universities, because there has been years of groundwork there to earn that partnership. I think a lot of people wait for a tender to come out and then they're disappointed when they don't win it, but they don't have a relationship there. You haven't built any trust. You haven't built any, I guess, respect with the customer, that you're just another name on the list that's responding to a tender, Like, I think that is just so important. So, and then I think the next step down from that are those kind of high level accounts that might not be like those big enterprise accounts, but ones that you still really care about. Like, you need to be treating them with the same value as those larger enterprise opportunities as well. I think just time is so valuable to everyone. And if you're willing to give up your time to actually get to know the customer, spend some time with them, knowing that, our sales cycle is generally 5 years. 5 years is a pretty normal contract term. So if you know that that's kind of 3 years away, why wouldn't you just put in a little bit of effort for those 3 years, just to be a familiar name, a familiar face when that opportunity does arise? I think just so often people are like, oh, they're not in them yet, I'll focus on the ones that are. But I think just planting those seeds is just such a critical part of having a long-term career in a particular industry. And that's how you do become known and you do become respected in your field. I think the other thing as well is, not every deal I go into is a success story, but I think losing with grace is also incredibly important for long-term success as well. So that quite often I'll deal with a school, I'm not successful for whatever reason, I didn't understand the issue, or my price wasn't good enough, or I just didn't put forward the right mix of whatever they were looking for. And you're unsuccessful sometimes, and you can either take it personally or you can understand why you were unsuccessful, and then you get another crack at it in 3, 4, 5 years' time. I think a lot of the new business that I'm winning now is business that I was unsuccessful with 4 to 5 years ago, but because I've stuck it out and continued building on that relationship, I think that that's a lot of my planning as well, is where I am unsuccessful, is put in the effort, because then you can earn it next time, sort of thing. So
that's amazing. That losing with grace, I think, is a really lovely phrase, particularly when you said it, and Dean, the head of sales at Konica Minolta, will be pleased to hear that you're not planning on going anywhere. You're planning on being around for a few years. That'll be reassuring. But if we think about, like, a 5-year sales cycle is really long. And what you're asking your customers to do is not just replace their current printer with a new brand of printer. That's a big change that you ask your clients to make, right? It's a big infrastructure change. And it's not just that you're asking them to change the product that they're using, the equipment that you're using. There's a lot of time, energy, effort, and resources that I imagine have to go into the client side to make that change happen. So, you can see why for some clients they might say your offer has to be so compelling for us to warrant all of that effort and energy. And so when you win, it really is huge. And I think the fact that you sit down and you think, well, why didn't we win? Allows you to go, well, what did we miss? Was it just that our offer wasn't compelling enough? Was it legitimately priced, or was there something else that we didn't overcome? But you do, the fact that you're committed to the industry and that you're, in it for the long haul. I mean, that's huge. And I would imagine those meetings that you have to build relationships and trust every couple of months over the course of the 2, 3, 4 years out from that buying decision, you must learn a lot of information on that journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learn something new about each school I go see every time I go for a catch-up coffee or a chat. I think it's a great touch point to learn what's going on in their world, especially in education, because they can adopt all kinds of technology. If they've got staff that are like, well, we think that this particular type of technology is really important for our subject for X reason, you can see some pretty cool technology coming through schools. And by having those touch point meetings every, even if it's just once a year, you're learning so much about what's going on in their school. And that ultimately does have an impact on what I'm going to be talking about at some point, because it's all technology, right? And a lot of the time it can link together. So it's just an opportunity to understand what's going on in their world. And I think very few people bother to do that, because they're like, well, why would I bother? Because there's nothing in it for me right now. But the way I see it is having that understanding of what's going on with them helps me build the relationship with them and show that I do care about what's going on in their world and building on that.
That's great. I love all of that. It just shows that you're thinking quite deeply about how to pursue your customers and your prospects really so that they become customers. And you're right. I think a lot of organizations fall into the trap of thinking there's a tender coming out. That's absolutely a business we want to win. Let's go for it. But they haven't done the year's worth of work that leads up to that point.
Absolutely.
So if you could wind the clock back and you were just starting out in sales, is there anything that you would do differently, or is there any advice that you would have for people starting out, kind of knowing what you know now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's taken me a long, long time to learn this lesson, but you have to be willing to walk away from some opportunities. I think that particularly in my first few years in sales, I was just so hungry. I just wanted to be involved in everything. I didn't read buying signals very well. I think I wasted a lot of time pursuing things that were just never going to go anywhere. And I think that I'm a lot better at reading the room now. And I think it's something that you and I actually discussed when we caught up. I think it can be difficult to walk away from something that you feel like you've put a lot of effort into to get a foot in the door. Once you're in the door, if you're reading the room and you know that you are just going to be spinning your wheels there, you just have to be willing to walk away. At the end of the day, you're just going to be wasting your energy on something that's never going to come to fruition. You're better off using that energy somewhere else. I think as well, if you're dealing with someone that you can just tell that they're going to be a really difficult, grateful client, and it is a 5-year contract. It sounds awful, but if you know that they are going to be nothing but headaches for the next 4 or 5 years, again, sometimes you are just better off walking away because you know that they're going to take up a lot of your time and energy. Sometimes it's just business that you don't want. And I think that does come with years of experience. You can become a little bit more choosy in who you do and don't want to do business with as well. So I think when you're starting out in sales, you think, I do think most of the time, yes, the customer is right. But I think sometimes we also will put the customer's needs and, can't think of the way to phrase it, but we will prioritize them over ourselves. And sometimes we will let people be rude to us or take up time and make us solve problems that really aren't our problems to solve. I think sometimes because you're seen as just a salesperson that you get walked on a bit. So I think that, that's probably the biggest lesson I would have given to myself if I could go back to 20-year-old Kim and be like, the person that's treating you like dirt will always treat you like dirt. Move on. You don't want their business sort of thing. So
Yes. There is that thing, you're right, that I think salespeople see themselves as the servant to the customer master.
Yes, that's a great word, servant, yes.
And I just fundamentally disagree with that because to your point, the best relationships are one where they're mutually beneficial and it's peer-to-peer. And I'm pretty passionate about sales professionals and having a career as a sales professional. And in order to do that, you can't operate like you're the servant to the master. It has to be because we bring value to people's businesses.
Absolutely. I think that makes your role more enjoyable as well. If you're dealing with people that respect you, you're actually going to have a happier working life. And we spend so much time at work. I think it's critical that you're enjoying the people that you're dealing with on a day-to-day.
Yes, absolutely. And there is, again, something I learned many, many years ago starting out, and it sounds as though you did too, which is losing slowly is a very bad thing. And too many people try and resuscitate opportunities that are DNR, right? They're flatlined and you should be pursuing them and you should just, walk away with grace and, lose gracefully, but proactively exit rather than continue trying to pursue an opportunity that you're not well placed to win.
Yeah.
And you're not going to win and all the signs are there, but you're not prepared to to give it up and walk away and call it as lost. Yeah. But losing slowly, very bad thing.
Absolutely, yeah. If you know you're wasting your time, move on. Cut your losses as early as possible. Save your own time. You're doing yourself a massive favour.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So is there one secret nugget of advice that you'd give people?
I don't know. I think probably the biggest thing for me is just delivering on what I say I'm going to do. I hate when I see people go, okay, I'm going to get back to you in 3 days and then 3 weeks later the customer is chasing up the person that made the promise. Like, I just think that that's such a bad reflection on you, and it's also a bad reflection on the company as well, right? So yeah, I think that realistically, if you know that you're busy, set a timeline that's actually realistic. I think people want to set a timeline that looks great, but then not deliver on it. You're just setting yourself up for failure. So like, if you know that you're swamped at the moment, just communicate that with the customer. We're all humans. Like, they get it. They're busy too. So yeah, I think that that's probably been the biggest thing for me is just making sure that you set timelines that you can actually honor, and yeah, prioritizing as well. So like, if there's stuff that is super important, make sure that that's the first thing that you get to. And if there are things that you can give a couple more of extra days, to set the expectation with the customer and make that then your low priority stuff. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Wonderful. I love it. Well, let me see if I can summarize for our listeners some of the amazing things that you've shared, because you've actually talked about a number of key things today, and I really appreciate you willingly sharing so much. So before we finish up, let me try and summarize some of the things that I think people can try and adopt into their selling work in terms of what's made you successful that people could try and take on. You talked about consistency. You mentioned it at the start, and you've just really finished just then saying the same thing. And that's really delivering on the promises that you make, doing what you say that you're going to do, and importantly, do that so that you can build trust. Try and be a likable person. So easier for some than others, I think. But try and be a likable person, be yourself, and try and build those natural friendships with your prospects and your customers. Know your competitors well. So you've talked about, really thinking about and understanding your competitors' shortcomings, because obviously that's going to help you prospect and kind of identify where some of those gaps might exist and sell against that. Really listen to your customers, and a part of the way that you do that is kind of getting familiar with some of the common problems that they face, exploring those problems in deeper detail, really listening to what the customer shares with you. And that helps you then understand their drivers in terms of what, if they were going to make a change, what would be driving them to do so. Also being able to build your credibility by using your experience, giving examples of other customers who have had the same problems, but also how they were being impacted by those problems. And of course, the solutions that they might have implemented, differentiating yourself. And the part of the way that you do that is really digging into the problems and the challenges that customers have so that you can build bespoke proposals that address those issues. And of course, that helps with differentiation. It helps you stand out from a crowd. And I love the fact that you said the CRM is really important. We don't hear people talk about the CRM very often on this podcast, but I'm a big believer that using CRMs in a really meaningful way can help salespeople be more efficient and more productive. And you talked about it being really important. Spending time to understand the area that you're selling in, who you're selling to, and what's important to them is going to help set up your time so that you can focus on prospects and really cultivate those long-term opportunities, and just see every conversation that you have as an opportunity to plant a seed and build relationships. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you nailed it.
Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think that's a pretty good recap. I think it's so second nature now. Like, I think once you've been doing something for such a long time, it's not until you sit down and really talk about it in this way that you realize all the things that you are doing that ultimately lead you from not knowing a person at all to partnering with them and then managing their agreement for X amount of years. So yeah, it's actually been really refreshing sitting down and actually really thinking about the logical process that you do have in place and why it's working. So
great. Excellent. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing so much information. One of the things I really do love about this conversation and listening to you is you have made a really great career out of being a sales professional in one industry, and an industry that is still really relevant, really valuable. It's modernizing. Some people would, think that, print is not a space that can thrive, but I think it is. I think you're doing that really well with Konica Minolta. And, your performance shows that you're a standout at it. So congratulations on your success, and thanks for having a chat to me today.
No worries, Christina. Thank you.